You are listening to Armchair Healthcare, a podcast on pills, placebos, and policy.
Hi, welcome to Armchair Healthcare. What's up, Max?
Quite a lot this week. The Reduce It trial from Amarin showed a 25% reduction in events. So fewer heart attacks, strokes, deaths.
It looked great.
Yes, it looked fantastic.
Anything that reduces the cardiac events by 25% is great.
Yeah, because people were thinking that it wouldn't even be able to hit 15. And then it came out with 25, which was pretty fantastic.
Now, is this better than like the fish oil that I get at the pharmacy or at Trader Joe's?
Well, so if you're getting the fish oil that's mixed with DHA, then the answer is yes, theirs is better. There was recently, I think it was the Ascend study that was released at ACC, maybe, or it was a few months ago, and it completely failed. It really wasn't hitting on the events. It was a different patient population, also a different dose. Like, for example, they give 4 grams a day of this stuff, and in the Ascend trial is 1 gram a day.
I tell you what, I take fish oil, and I do not take 4 grams a day. That's for frickin' sure, because that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. So
it already feels like a lot that I'm taking already.
So there are pure or 90% pure EPA products on the market that you can buy like on Amazon or your natural food store or whatever. But they're pretty expensive. So it's $30 for 60 soft gels, and those soft gels are 500 milligrams each. So to get to this dose, you basically you would need to take 8 of those a day.
Wow.
So it's not very convenient, and so you'd be spending like $30 a week essentially. And at least here, if they get the expanded label and all that other stuff, you should be able to get it definitely cheaper through your copay, through your insurance.
And is that the only selling point for these guys? I mean, it's just EPA. It's the same stuff, right? I mean, if somebody else could sell it for cheaper, would they be able to compete against this? I mean, they don't really have any IP that's worth a damn, if I remember correctly.
They have purification IP, and then other process IP, and I don't think their IP is actually
purification IP is. I mean,
well, just to give you a sense, though, so there are 4 paragraph 4 filers, so that means there's 4 people who say they've been able to make a copy, and are challenging their patents, etc. But Teva, which was one of them, they did settle with the company, and they've agreed not to launch a generic until 2029. Now, some of their earlier patents expire, much sooner than that. I don't remember what year, and their exclusivity will be up relatively soon as well. So the fact that Teva's willing to wait several years shows that the RRP is probably a little bit stronger than you would think. But they will have to contend with, of course, the vitamin store fish oils, but those are of varying quality, and there's really no way to tell as a consumer which one's good and which one's bad, because it's not like, like for example, this data is in MACE events. How are you going to know if you're taking a good fish oil or a bad fish oil?
Well, yeah, and this is after this study. I imagine there's going to be a lot of docs out there that are actually going to be prescribing this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I would think so. And it's relatively inexpensive. Like the PCSK9s, like Repatha, that came out, trying to be kind of like the second line after statins. They're around like $7,500 a year. This is like much cheaper and reduces events much more. So this will kind of blow like that Amgen and Sanofi Regeneron products kind of out of the water. Because why would you give those drugs when you can give this, at least to like relatively normal people?
Yeah, I agree. I've always been a little bit skeptical. I've always been like, always push back on people trying to sell vitamins as drugs, but I'm always happy to be proven wrong. This one definitely looks great. It looks like it really works, and it works better than the regular old fish oil. So I'm a convert.
Yeah, but one thing that's kind of annoying to me, so there was this website, Health News Review. They decided to review the Stat News article on this news. So they were just really being kind of like pointy-headed, pearl-clutching, as we could say in Hebrew or Yiddish, nudniks. Like they were just kind of criticizing everything about this story.
I've seen them before. I think I follow them on Twitter, and I think they kind of push back on everything because they're like, well, that was just in mice. That doesn't necessarily mean anything for humans.
Well, that's fine.
Which is, well, I think, what we do is we apply the appropriate amount of skepticism where it belongs. And a mouse study is still a mouse study. It's still something. You know what I mean? It's a lead. So maybe we don't trump it up as a new cure for cancer when something works in mice, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, cancer has been cured in mice so often in these studies that like they ought to be like throwing parades.
It's an amazing time to be a mouse.
It is, but unfortunately, it doesn't often translate into humans. This, though, I mean, they're criticizing this trial also. They're like, without absolute numbers, it is impossible to judge the importance of these results because they want the detail on like how many deaths were what was the reduction in deaths, what was the reduction in strokes, heart attacks, all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's like, look, it's 25%. It's pretty amazing. It's really hard to hit these cardiovascular outcome studies. It's a very high bar, and they're upset about that. They're upset about the attribution of one of the investigators. So Stat News properly had a quote from one of the doctors in the trial and called him, an investigator in the trial. So these people and Health News Review are upset that the Stat News people didn't say how much money that guy got from Amarin, who's the sponsor of the trial. And it's like,
of course he got money. He was working for them.
He was an investigator. Obviously, he's not completely objective, and so that's pretty obvious. And it's not, you don't have to put like every single little detail about every single person that you quote. Like, what are they going to do? Put like, oh, and this person, they got divorced last year. I mean,
can't we have some good news occasionally? I want to be happy every once in a while. I want to sort of let go of my cynicism and feel positive about the world and drug development and human health and well-being.
And, in this case, like these guys they make it sound like the company is withholding the data, like they're doing something sneaky. Well, when all they're doing is waiting a month and a half to present it at a major conference, like a completely normal thing to do.
And they're gonna put it in the paper. You can't put all that stuff in the press release.
I can't take these people. I mean, these were kind of like the all monitor, tattletale kind of kids who. It's not like, hey, this kid tried to burn the school down untold on that. It was more like, oh, this kid, he has his orange book in the red folder.
Kind of like somebody who argues over some inconsistency in the Star Wars canon or something like that.
That's important. No, that's important. I mean, and look, okay, just have to say this. I can't even watch that last Star Wars movie.
Han shot first.
Well, that's true. Han always shot first. That was like ludicrous. I thought it was a ludicrous change, but I don't understand how Princess Leia could be like thrown out into space and not like completely die like instantaneously. I don't care if she is a Jedi.
Because the Force, because there's magic, Max. There's magic. You just have to admit that there's magic in Star Wars. It's just magic.
By the way, if you watch, Laura Dern's in that movie, and so they don't actually have laser guns in real life, so they have to kind of pretend they're shooting. So if you slow it down, you can see her going pew pew every time she shoots. It's
pew,
actually
pew,
quite funny.
Pew, pew.
Yeah, like she you can see her mouth it. It's hilarious.
Well, I do that when I shoot a regular gun.
Well, yeah, I mean a toy gun. You mean?
No, a regular gun. I go pew 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 pew.
No, you don't.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I don't know why you would do that.
They take it, sucker. Pew 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 pew.
Okay, and do you also hold it sideways like a proper gangsta?
Don't ever say that again.
What, gangsta?
Yeah.
Cash me outside. How about that?
God. So anyway.
So there was also other good news on the cardiovascular front.
Yeah, it's a good week for hearts.
Yes. The data from the Mitraclip.
Mitraclip?
Mitral?
Mitra.
I thought it was mitral.
Well, it's a mitral valve, but it's Mitra.
Okay, Mitra, sorry.
That's how I say it.
I always say mitral clip, but I guess it is.
But there's no L. There's no L in the name of the.
This is sort of like the Berenstain Bears. I just.
Yeah, it's Mitra
or remuneration.
I don't
Remuneration.
Oh shush. And but yeah, so this is new data out. It came in the New England Journal of Medicine. Evidently, the Mitraclip works great. Cuts the rate of death. Is that right? the rate of death by 50% approximately. And patients with like severe heart failure with mitral regurgitation.
Yeah, death or hospitalization for heart failure went
Death
from...
or hospitalization.
Yeah, it was 68% in control and around 46% in the Mitraclip.
So not as big as I thought, but still pretty damn good.
No, but on just death, it was 46% versus 29%. So I mean, look, these are pretty nice numbers.
And I think this is great for something that's basically like, you know, one of those binder clips they use to hold a stack of papers together. You basically get one of these things and you put it in your heart, and your heart works better. It's kind of genius. It's great. So your heart gets too swollen, and then your valves stop working. And so this just keeps your valves sort of still touching each other so they can work. As simple as that. Sometimes these stories for
Medical
devices are just, they're so simple. After working with like pharma or something, you're like, this just is so great, and it works so freaking well.
Yeah, like the lap band, it was literally a rubber band.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And it works. And there's other stuff like, another one I like is Clip has, it's like this clip that you put on your left atrial appendage, right? Which is just where strokes come from. Just strokes are just made in this little part of your heart. So you just clip it, close it off. That's it.
Yeah.
Fewer strokes.
Well, then you have like drug-eluting stents and all that other stuff. And
those are
these
pretty neat too.
relatively
Stents
simple.
are very, very cool, although they might not work. We don't even have to get into that. Stents probably don't work. Yeah, it's cool news. But there's a degree of controversy about this, Max. Isn't that right?
There is a little bit of controversy because there recently was another study that showed that it did not actually impact, like death or hospitalization. The difference is that in the most recent study, the COAP study, which was the positive one, that was sponsored by the company, and I believe the other one, which was Mitraclip, I believe that was not sponsored by the company.
So it went from like basically zero effect to cutting death rates in half. So there's something up there, but I like to remain positive. I'm a positive guy.
Yeah, I mean, this was in 614 patients. This wasn't like the standard, like kind of bioturd 10 patient thing. Oh, look, we have like so much benefit. It's a lot of patients. It's harder to get these kinds of numbers in such large numbers of patients. Like unless you actually have something. I mean, it could be sometimes because when it's an academic study, it might not be as professionally run as a corporate sponsored study. So sometimes it's just something like that. Like it could be better data. Or they're a lot more diligent about making sure the people are meeting the inclusion criteria. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that really when a company like Abbott runs a trial.
They want to make some medical claims based on this. So they're going to make sure it's tight. Yeah.
I mean, it has to pass FDA muster. This is stuff that's going to be reviewed ad nauseum by, a key regulator. So they can't mess around. An academic can basically do what they want. They just want to get published.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that feeling.
Anyway, so I'm going to say that I think the Mitraclip probably does do something. And looks pretty good.
Yeah. So aspirin bad, fish oil good, paperclip good.
Yeah, paperclip.
All right.
So TG Therapeutics.
Oh gosh, here we go.
Formerly Manhattan Pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
Which is a Mike Weiss, Lindsay Rosenwald company.
That'll mean something to people that it means something to.
Yes. They were supposed to come out with data on their Unity CLL trial, which combined a couple of their drugs. One was an anti-CD20. The other one was a...
PI3 kinase?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So they came out with a news release. They said that the response rate data that they said they were going to release was not mature enough for release, and that they're just going to focus on PFS going forward.
Okay, so this is getting real fishy.
Yeah.
Real fishy, because I've heard this. It's not mature. The data is not mature yet. I've heard that before. And
yeah, that's for survival.
Yeah, there are legitimate reasons why you could say that, and that's why you can get away with saying that. Because, you sometimes you have to wait for people to die or progress or whatever. But this is response rate.
Yes.
Which is you just literally show up at your doctor's office after 6 months or a year or whatever, and they measure the tumor and has it gone down or Well, in this case, they take a biopsy and they look at your cells and see what they look like. And there's no maturation beyond that. It's a goalpost endpoint where it's you cross the goalpost and that's it. You just get a readout at a particular time. And so how could that be not mature?
Yeah, it really makes no sense. And just kind of to clarify something, when we say people need to, you have to have events, you have to die, it's really for the statistical plan. Because
we don't want anyone to die.
No, but if you only have like two deaths in one arm, one in the other, it's just, you can't have a p-value based on that. It's just going to be gobbledygook. You have to wait till it gets to a certain kind of critical mass before you have enough events to have enough data points to get the statistics. So here, though, they should have all the data points. There's really no reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah. Everyone showed up for their follow-up. I mean, unless they decided... the only thing I could possibly come up with is that because they announced it was fully enrolled at one point, and so everyone knew that this data was coming out at a certain time. Unless they decided to cull a certain number of people after the fact, right, and then replace them with new people, that's the only thing that could push that back.
They pulled some people?
No, I'm speculating here. Right? That's the only thing that could cause because then new people had to wait till 6 months or whatever. Right?
No, that wouldn't make sense. Like they suddenly decide these people don't count in the trial.
Yeah.
I think that would be
that would
also be fishy.
That's also very fishy. There's no good way out of this.
No, there's not. And they said on the call, their quote is saying, "We recognize that the accelerated approval is not likely." So
yeah, I don't think any approval is likely.
Yeah, I mean, this was an open label trial, so the doctors are not blinded to what they are giving these patients, and they'll know what the response rates actually are. So the company can kind of, just by doing a poll, figure out approximately where they're landing. And so they could be technically blinded to the results, but really not be, and then just sort of, let's not release this data because then basically our programs are going to be dead.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Okay, so let's just assume this trial is a complete bust and it doesn't work, right? That's actually kind of surprising to me, right? Because I'm surprised that their drugs, their combo, isn't actually doing something. Right, or at least doing something more. This compared versus Gaziva, right? CD20.
Yeah, and with another drug. So it was against an active combo.
And yeah, I'm surprised it's okay. I don't know.
So I mean, look, they probably were going to miss the bogey, and that's that. If it were another company, well, actually, I don't think any company could pull this off, but especially not one with this kind of management history. I mean, I think this is Mike Weiss's, I swear it could be his 7th company. I believe 1 or 2 companies ago, he was the CEO of Coronado, and they were developing pig parasites for, I think, ulcerative colitis or something.
Was he or Lindsay the CEO of Coronado? I thought Lindsay was.
No, Mike Weiss.
Okay.
It was Mike Weiss and Lucy Liu.
Okay, yeah.
Not the actress.
I know Lucy.
So they raised $70 million and then immediately failed, and then
that's where Fortress came from, because somehow they got just gobs and gobs of money for pig whipworm as a treatment. Then they failed immediately after that, and then basically let's make a whole bunch more companies, and that's Fortress, which is literally the same company as Coronado.
Yes. I mean, this is what happens. They just kind of keep changing the names. It's really all the same shells. Mm-hmm. This was, again, Manhattan Pharmaceuticals, which had been around for a long time.
And now there's Mustang, which is the CAR T one. There's a few other ones. Journey, which is there's a raft of these freaking things.
Oh, no. Lindsay Rosenwald, who is, I think, Mike Weiss's father-in-law. This is what he does. He creates a ton of these companies. Most of them don't go anywhere, but a few succeed. For example, Cougar was a very big success. I think Chelsea Therapeutics was a moderate success, and then there have been a lot of others that have not been so successful. A lot of them usually don't have any IP or really bad management. I mean, in this case, it's I'm not even sure what the strategy really was. I mean, do we really need another CD20? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, where's the where's the oomph in that?
Well, maybe it's a super good CD20. I mean, I don't think anything's ever really been able to beat Rituxan at all.
It's a very, very high bar.
Yeah, it's really good. Even when the people have tried it before, and the PI3 kinase, those things are just toxic as hell. That's the problem with those.
Yeah, and previously this company has done shady stuff. Like they had I believe it was called the Genuity trial with their anti-CD20 and ibrutinib, and they were talking about filing on that, and then they came out with data, and then they were like, well, since the Unity trial is so close, I think might apply at the same time with both data sets. And now they're like, well, we don't know what we're going to do. Really, this is all just a vehicle to make the management wealthy. I mean, if you look at Mike Weiss is paid as much as a pharma CEO, like a large pharma CEO with like commercial organization, all that stuff. I mean, either last year or the year before, he made $14 million all in. Mm-hmm. And he's also chairman, and he's paid an advisory fee, and it goes to his offshore LLC in the Caribbean.
Carib Pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, it was a Carib LLC or something.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like all this shady stuff all the time.
Should we talk about National?
Oh, yeah, and then, of course, there's the whole thing with National
Securities.
National Securities is owned by Lindsay Rosenwald.
Yeah, so these guys own pharma companies and a brokerage.
Yes, a brokerage that has equity research.
I wonder if these are buys.
Oh yeah. So you have this case where a broker dealer or an analyst at a broker dealer is putting a buy rating on a stock where his boss owns or is kind of affiliated with it. What do you think he's going to do? Is he completely objective? And it's not.
I think that should probably be illegal.
What?
It should probably be illegal.
Well, it's not necessarily illegal, but at least disclosed. And that was actually the issue. They weren't disclosing all of this properly. This was, I believe, a Reuters expose, like maybe a couple months ago. So they weren't disclosing it. And they also have a disproportionate number of their actual physical brokers having problems with their licenses in the past.
Yeah, they're one of those.
So, kind of if you remember The Sopranos, like one of those Wabistic spoiler room kind of situations.
We're not making any accusations here. We're just saying.
We just say,
maybe somebody should look into this. SEC.
It's just amazing how they've been able to keep it going for so long. I mean, so yeah, they had Coronado. Before that, it was Carix. Before Carix actually did well. So when Mike Weiss was the CEO, they had
picked it up at the top, right?
What?
He picked it up at the top and rode it like a ski slope all the way down to the bottom.
Not quite. Like it was like pretty low, and then it went really high, and then went low again, then went higher, and then completely blew up because of a phase 3 failure. And
that's another one, turning an iron supplement into a drug. Don't make.
Yeah, but at least it was legitimate. So
and Rockwell Medical literally was doing the same thing too.
Well, but it's not an iron supplement. They were just putting an iron in the dialysate.
But people already do that.
Anyway,
they're like, "Oh, our iron is better. We got better iron."
No,
it's a fucking vitamin. It's a vitamin, Max.
No, but it did get better. I mean, Ron Ben-Sur was the CEO when he took over. He got this thing approved, and then he left, and now he's at the Eurogen.
Yeah, of course they got it approved because it's just a vitamin. There's no safety issues.
Yeah, but it's not.
Well, there's probably more safety issues for iron than pretty much anything else. But
look, at least they did it. But it was all after Mike Weiss was gone, and then before that, he was at Genta, which was just like a historic failure. And look, he's a nice guy. I've talked to him. He's like he's very friendly, but it's just I don't know some of the kind of these moves that he's making a little bit questionable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is after this, I mean, you can't really take anything seriously. At least they seemed I guess they did use pig whipworm eggs as a drug.
Yes.
Maybe we should have never taken any of them seriously.
I mean, they got to a $1 billion market cap. I mean, this was like a real company. I mean, I wouldn't have, I mean, I was always kind of like skeptical of the whole thing, but if I were on the buy side, I wouldn't have necessarily shorted it just because they are a good kind of salesman of their stock.
Sure.
So it was a little dangerous unless you knew something. I mean, in this case, I mean, geez, I don't know who's advising them on IR, but this was probably the worst possible thing they could have possibly announced. I think they would have done better if they just said it failed and we're just going to focus on MS.
Yeah, because now they could have said it failed, but we're going to see how it shapes up, or like this didn't work so well, but we think there's leads, and we're refocusing our efforts instead of just saying a lie that just didn't fool anyone, because the stock has been shredded since then.
Oh yeah, I know Mike Weiss had a history, but like a lot of people kind of didn't know that history, so he could have built some positive credibility with this, but instead it's kind of like he's making an argument that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So anyway. So I do like grinding some axes, so I'll do one more.
All right.
I mean, I've seen some of these like anti-vaccine videos, and they make, like, if you don't know medicine or stuff like that, like how much aluminum you normally drink in a day just from living, they just like scaremonger, and they do wrap it in science and make it sound interesting. But if you actually do an in-depth point by point like research on what they're saying, it's like almost everything is a complete lie or misdirection.
Yeah. I just feel like the medical establishment is sort of, in a lot of ways, not really done a good job, I think. Not necessarily with this, but just in engendering confidence in people in general. I think this is sort of a side effect of the sort of paternalistic way we've treated medicine in this country for a long, long time. We could have done a better job as a society and sort of communicating these things to people and communicating the uncertainties involved too. Yeah, because if you say, well, this is the best thing that we know right now, we think it's a good idea, instead of everything being, yes, you have to do this 100%, then you're sort of, you're always crying wolf, right? When you're 50% sure about something, right, and it turns out to be wrong, the people are also going to question things that we're really 100% sure about, like vaccines. And so I think people can handle that. I think people can handle a little bit of ambiguity, but it's not how we treat medicine in this country.
Well, I think also one problem is like all beliefs are considered valid right now.
It's true. How's the saying go? Like, my knowledge is not equal to your ignorance. It doesn't sound on the same pedestal.
So, but, if you, like, in polite company, if someone's going off on vaccines, you're not really allowed to say anything without people looking at you funny. Like, oh, he's weird. He's like pro-vaccine. And so all of this stuff is allowed to fester because no one can say, no, that's completely mental. You can't not vaccinate your child. You're being insane. Like, that's just not appropriate anymore because you'd be considered some Neanderthal or something.
Yeah, I try my best. I go to West Coast on a pretty regular basis, and this really seems to be prevalent out there for some reason. And as everything else, people put themselves in their own little bubbles, like you're saying. And when I encounter this sort of thing, I just try to very calmly and try to not do that paternalistic thing, like you're a fucking idiot, even though I might think that. I just calmly try to explain, oh, well, this is, where this comes from, and, so the history behind it and this and that. And if you explain to people, like, yeah, the people were worried about vaccines for epilepsy for a long time, and then they found out that wasn't the cause. It can trigger an epileptic seizure, but it's generally not what causes a long-term problem, and how that evolved in this whole problem with autism. So, you know what we need to do? We need to be nicer to each other and love each other more. That's really the solution here.
No, it's actually, I think we need to be meaner to each other and tell each other
nicer.
if something's wrong.
Love.
No, wrong. If they're wrong, you got to tell them they're wrong and not be like, oh, your belief is valid, even though it's completely fakakt.
No, you can say, oh, well, this is, you don't say you're wrong. You say, oh, well, this is the actual evidence for that. Yeah. This is evidence for this and that, and I understand why you might think that.
Or you could say, my kids will never play with your kids, right?
Yes, I mean, that's the boat I'm in right now. I'm just like, I'm actually interviewing a pediatrician tonight, make sure that no kids that are anti-vax kids are allowed in that practice because
Yes.
I will not let my kid go there.
Yes, my local pediatrician, the one I use, they don't allow non-vaccinated kids in the practice.
Yes.
It
As it should
is.
be.
I mean, when you
They
first
should be
hear
ostracized. They should be not allowed to go to public school. You should like keep these kids away from everyone.
Whoa, so much for like showing the love. Look at you.
Yeah, I mean, the buck's got to stop somewhere. You show them love. You show their minds love,
But you give them the whip.
and bodies hate.
Okay.
That got a little weird. All right.
So basically, he's like a hippie Nazi.
A hippie Nazi?
Yeah, you want to show the love, but then like
no, not.
no, it's actually no. You know what you're like? You're like that Dead Kennedy song, California Uber Alles, where like kind of everything's about like smiling.
No,
but
you know
it's
what
actually
you know what I do, Max?
What?
Dress like a capitalist, live like a communist, fight like a fascist. Anyway, what else you got, Max?
Don't you want to make money like a capitalist?
Sure, make money like a capitalist, live like a communist. Let's just say
Nah.
dress like a capitalist. That's.
I don't want to live like a communist. Okay, I've actually lived in a communist country, and it's kind of dirty and it's poverty. I don't think that's a good idea.
No, yes, that's true. But that's not the spirit of what. Anyway, what else we got, Max?
Oh, so this happened today, which was a huge surprise for everyone who was probably taking LSD. Geron, their drug failed.
What?
Yeah, unbelievable. Geron, which has been around for like ever. Originally, I think they were saying they had some drug that could help you potentially live forever.
Well, did it straight up fail, or did J&J just discontinue their collaboration?
No, so J&J discontinued it, but only after. So their data in myelofibrosis for imetelstat was they had a 1.7% response rate. Now in their they had a single center study provide data in 2013, which had a 28% response rate and 22% CR. So this is actually, as one person on Twitter, I think it was Zach Biotech, pointed out, or maybe it was someone else. This is why you shouldn't believe single center data. Mm-hmm. You know, there's some cherry picking of patients, whatever. So when they did a real trial, the drug did almost nothing, and it's imploded. So now, when I started in this industry, so like 19 years ago, the stock was trading at about $10. It's now about $2. So it's 80% decline over the course of 19 years.
Well, that's pretty slow on an annualized basis, Max.
Oh yeah, no, for some years it would.
If you want to lose money but not too much money, this is for you.
I guess so, yeah.
I'd unfortunately deserve some credit for this one because he's been calling out the sort of red flags on this for a while. Like,
yes.
Like the fact that these guys just did a financing too, like ahead of this, where they would have been entitled to a milestone payment if this had been going through. And what do they do? Like a few weeks ago, they do a financing.
Yeah,
it didn't go through.
That's a huge red flag for any buy side investor. Is if they have good data, they're going to wait for that data because then they can raise money at a much higher stock price.
Yeah, they could have done that, and they could have also
got the milestone.
Got the milestone.
Yeah.
So
so they basically figured it wasn't going to work out or weren't 100% confident, so they raised the money so that they could continue. I mean, they have like $183 million war chest. So now Geron's just going to be like Zoma and just last forever and never be successful.
Mm-hmm. Buy something else. It's time to buy something else, guys.
Oh, of course. Yeah, they'll spend like $20 million, buy something in phase 1 or 2, use that for a few years, throw it away, do something else. Anyway, Geron failed. Shocking. There was also some other good news on the, I guess it's like the medical device front. I think that's what you would consider. So there was a study in which some people who were paralyzed were able to have some mobility after some sensory motor function was regained after they got like a little bit of a zap to the spinal cord.
Yeah, and what's the story here? I didn't read this article. I'm always so skeptical of this spinal cord stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean these are very small studies. It was like,
is it like a little like a little medical device electric thing that bridges the sort of gap between their nerves. What is it?
It's an implanted stimulator. That's what they call it. So I'm assuming it's down there and help, like, zaps it to help, like, I believe they're described as, like, kind of jump starting the nerves. Like, they weren't actually caught in whatever accident happened, and so they were able to kind of, like, they were just sort of dormant, and then
Okay,
they,
so
like,
they
kind of
weren't
enlivened
necessarily,
them.
because the problem here is what people don't really realize about your nerves in general is that the cells are really freaking huge, right? So you can have, like, if you get your spinal cord cut or a nerve cut, right, you're cutting part of these cells that are running, like, the full length of where this nerve runs. So, like, if it's a sensory nerve, it runs from, like, the tip of your finger all the way to your spine. There's one cell. The little electrical signal goes down, like, sort of bundle, right? But it's just one cell. It's like the cell itself is the entire length of the nerve, right? And so all the sort of machinery that's keeping the cell running and, like, sort of all the genetic material is located oftentimes very, very far away from where the injury to the nerve is. So if you get that damage to it, there's, like, nothing that it can do to fix it. You know what I mean? There's nothing where, like, another nerve can migrate in or anything else like that. It's just, you're donezo. That's it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how exactly this is working? Like, you would need something intact for this to make any sense to me.
Yeah, no. So there are a couple, like, the metaphor they gave in the or the explanation they gave in the stat piece was, if there are normally, say, 100 connections that telegraph a command from the brain along the spinal cord, a serious injury might mean there are only 1 or 2 remaining. Those might not be enough to convert a signal into movement, but perhaps the stimulation boosts the signals enough to trigger movement.
Okay, that could work. Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Like, it's like it's upping the signal to noise. That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think they didn't necessarily have, like, feeling. So they had, like, some movement but not feeling. So it was, like, you know, a little step in the right direction with some rehab and this old jolt. But it would be nice. But these kinds of stimulators they were testing it for years.
Yeah, I have very low expectations for any of this spinal cord stuff in general.
But
it's really sad.
But it's nice. And then also, I think in just some more good news was in I think one of the Nature publications. It was on the gene editing of mitochondria.
Yeah. So you think this is good news?
I mean, they successfully did it with, I think, like, zinc finger or something.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
I wouldn't want it done to me.
That's fine. I mean, this CRISPR stuff and zinc finger stuff or whatever is, you know, it's some useful tools out there, but I don't want anyone to trump us up to we're gonna treat our mitochondria with some CRISPR drug, anything like that. Not anytime soon. It's good that they could do it. There's not a lot of DNA in mitochondria, right? They've just got a little bit of vestigial DNA from when they were bacterias. They sort of evolved as bacterias, and our cells gobbled them up, or the primordial ooze gobbled them up, and now they're like where all the energy is made in your cell. And so they got a little bit of DNA left over from that, but it's not very much. It's not very much DNA at all. It's almost nothing. So it's something like 100 genes, 200 genes. Not even enough to make the mitochondria run. Most of the genes involved in the sort of functioning of the mitochondria itself are in the nucleus. Yeah, I guess it's in advance. It's all right. So, but yeah, I won't expect any sort of drugs from that anytime soon.
Oh, well, I mean, that's pretty much all CRISPR, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
That is all I got.
All right, I guess that's it this week.
Yeah, so everyone, please subscribe and review us on iTunes.
All right, later.
Thank you. Bye.
Our theme music is by Hazar.